Some weeks ago, Linda, who's in our marketing department, a marketing manager, asked me if I would speak on this occasion as part of a marketing program. I see a lot of friends from North Hill too. Thank you all for coming. And good morning, everyone. She asked me to suggest a topic, a title, and also sometime later she asked me if I would write up what I would maybe be talking about. The title that I had suggested, as I recall it, was the reverse of what's up there. I think I put intellectual life, intellectual and international life in that order. This is better. This is an improvement. I'm awfully glad that Linda did not put a question mark after intellectual life. I would like to read what I wrote because it was my guide in thinking about what I might say this morning. North Hill is open to the world in many spheres of human accomplishment, including music and the visual arts, science and technology, history and politics, economics and business, and philosophy and religious tradition, and also in the range of experience of persons who live and are employed here, where we come from, have worked or served in, and have traveled to places all over the globe. To reside at North Hill is a learning experience, an unexpected further education. It is not only in its many formal programs, the Friday Night Forum, the Understanding Our World series, the North Hill Reads book, the annual Frawley Lecture, and the new North Hill Academy. It is the enlightenment of informal conversations that one has on an almost daily basis with fellow residents, team members, and family and other visitors of all ages. The interchange enhances our mental and moral life with a constant stimulus of shared thinking, humor, and accumulated wisdom. Sometimes I think it's almost overstimulating. Some of you may feel the same. I have prepared some slides. I don't have a text, but I do have some slides and a few notes. I'll make some comments along the way. The two images you see here, the globe with the flags on it, that obviously represents the international, and the figure, human figure with the face, intellectual life, indicates the intellectual aspect of what I would like to speak about. For me, these are inseparable, the international and the intellectual. They're different, but they're so connected that I really can't possibly separate the two. And that's probably true for very many here, because we have lived abroad, we have worked, some of us are from abroad. We've worked abroad, many have traveled and continue to travel abroad. I often think of Torstein Hagen, the chairman of Viking Cruises, on Masterpiece Theater. He emphasizes how travel broadens our minds, which it does do. Imaginary travel and recollection of travel, memory, is a very powerful factor. What I will be saying reflects my own individual experience at North Hill and beyond. It's personal in that respect, if not idiosyncratic, maybe in a few respects, but I hope it also may have some resonance with others. In fact, I'm confident that it will. And Bob Weaver, who is here this morning, very kindly offered to use this microphone and take it around in case, and I hope there will be some discussion afterward, and some of you might wish to share some observations and reflections that you might have about our topic, international and intellectual life at North Hill. I'd like to begin by saying that my central overall theme is this: the life of the mind is global. And to put it very simply, it can mean at one end of a spectrum, so to speak, that the globe is in each of our own minds. That is, the world inheres in our own heads. But there also is another view about the life of the mind as global, that there is such a thing as a kind of global mind. A noosphere, a term which I may say a little bit more about as we proceed. And I've selected a couple of books to refer to. One is Hannah Arendt's book, The Life of the Mind, which is described as the groundbreaking investigation on how we think.
Alan, you're on the wrong slide.
Oh,
Alan, the slides are going.
I see what I've done. I have this, but I also have the key. I have my notes on the keyboard. Okay.
Go back to Cindy.
There you go.
Careful. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. We are in the period of Rosh Hashanah. Some of our residents are not here this morning, but they're very much part of this dialogue. If this is being recorded, as I think it might be, I hope that some of those who are not here might be able to see it. Some of you may wish to see it yourselves afterward, if there's some certain things that you would like to follow up on. Hannah Arendt is well known, of course. She's known among scholars for her work on the origins of totalitarianism. She helped to give that term, in fact, that concept, currency, and has deepened the way we think about it. She's probably even better known for her book based on her own presence at it, The Trial of Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem. Eichmann in Jerusalem, Report on the Banality of Evil. And I'd like to mention that, refer to that in connection with Rosh Hashanah. She argued in that book that Eichmann was an ordinary person, nothing remarkable about him, whatever. But he did terrifying things. And the contrast between his ordinariness and the enormity of what he was involved with and what he did personally made her think deeply about the relationship between thought and morality, between thinking and morality. And I would like to share with you some of her own words, which she spoke after she was being criticized. It was reported that the Anti-Defamation League wanted rabbis to criticize her at Rosh Hashanah, because that, of course, it's a period of self-examination, reflection on responsibility and judgment. And it may have seemed to some, not only in the Jewish community, that her argument in Eichmann, Jerusalem, was a way of explaining away guilt and denying human responsibility. Here's what she said about that in response. In my report on the Eichmann trial, I spoke of the banality of evil. Behind that phrase, I was dimly aware of the fact that it went counter to our tradition of thought, literary, theological, or philosophic, about the phenomenon of evil. However, what I was confronted with was utterly different and still undeniably factual. I was struck by the manifest shallowness of the doer that made it impossible to trace the incontestable evil of his deeds to any deeper level of roots or motives. The deeds were monstrous, but the doer, at least the effective one now on trial, was quite ordinary commonplace, and neither demonic nor monstrous. Might the problem of good and evil, our faculty of telling right from wrong, be connected with our faculty of thought? Could the activity of thinking as such, the habit of examining whatever happens to come to pass and to attract attention, regardless of results or specific content, could this activity of thought, of thinking, be among the conditions that make men abstain from evil doing or even actually condition them against it? She is not suggesting, and she went on to say, thoughtfulness by itself can help to prevent evil. It cannot produce good by itself. That requires education. It requires culture. It requires training. It requires habit. It requires custom. But without thoughtfulness, it's impossible, arguably, to prevent the occurrence of evil, such as happened then and may be happening now, as we, in fact, is happening now, as we've seen in many places. Now, the other book, I can't say I've read it, by Howard Bloom. I didn't know who he was. He's a writer. Obviously, he has a very fertile mind. He's a well-known music producer. The book is called The Global Brain, and the subtitle of it is The Education of Mass Mind from the Big Bang of the 21st century to the 21st century. It was published in the year 2000. I'll come back to that, because it's this notion of a global brain, of a mind that encompasses everything, diverse as that is a concept which is very, very current now, but is at odds with Hannah Arendt's way of thinking. There's a tension between the personal, I've called it, and the planetary. There's a connection between them, but I myself opt more toward the personal, that what matters is the world in the minds of each of our heads, yours and mine, that there isn't really something completely separate from that, a kind of collective mentality. Now, to speak about some of the facets, some of the aspects of life at North Hill, I prepared a few slides on different things, which I'll say a few words about as we proceed. Music. A while ago, before the auditorium was remodeled and rebuilt, there was a program in the Grand Lobby with a group of Spanish guitarists who played jazz riffs on classic Spanish music. Albéniz, Manuel de Falla, by the way, I misspelled Falla, there's no I in it, there's two L's, and particularly Joaquin Rodrigo, who was probably best known for his guitar concerto called Concerto de Aranjuez. I mentioned, happened to be there, and in the Q&A afterward, I mentioned Gil Evans and Miles Davis, who had played some of the same music. Evans was a very well-known Canadian-American jazz orchestrator, and Miles Davis, of course, is a famous trumpeter. And Juanito Pascual became very excited, and he referred to the album that Gil Evans and Miles Davis did. It was 1960. I'd forgotten how long ago it was. But they thought, if those two great jazz musicians could do that, so can we. So you have these Spanish guitarists playing jazz versions of Spanish classical music inspired by some Canadian and American musicians who were similarly inspired by it. But just a wonderful fusion of artistic life. I found it's still online. You can find sketches of Spain it's on YouTube and it's wonderful. Da 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 da. I mean, it's fantastic. So I urge you to hear it if you have a few minutes. Now, art. There are quite a few artists here at North Hill, and one whose work is being featured currently is Helen Merowitz's work. And the exhibition is called The Evolution of an Artist, Helen Merowitz and the North Hill Years. I don't know Helen well, but I remember a conversation that I had with her once, and she said with a smile, I was one of the Guerrilla Girls. Guerrilla Girls? Guerrilla Girls. This was a group of women, female artists in New York City who picketed MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, wearing gorilla masks. And they were evidently very, very effective. Well, she has been very generous. She's been here for many years and has established wonderfully a scholarship for a Needham High School senior who is interested in proceeding with education in the arts in the future. And it's a scholarship that I guess is annually awarded. Now, North Hill is filled with art. The best single course I ever took in college was Fine Arts 13 at Harvard, a history of art. Wonderful course. It really changed my life. And when I walk up and down the hallways in North Hill, it's like a review of Fine Arts 13 and more. I could mention so many of the artists that I learned about then, and of course a lot of contemporary artists as well that I've come to know independently. At the end of our hallway, on the second floor of the I Wing, is this painting. It's called Sydney Flying Colors, by an artist I'd never heard of before, Peter Sebastian Graham. And many of you have probably been to Sydney. My wife Pam and I were there. We actually went to the Opera House because My Fair Lady was playing. Julie Andrews was the director of it. It was a wonderful experience. There are at least two other paintings by this man, Peter Graham, at North Hill, up in Suma, on sort of the north side of it, with his very distinctive orange color. And of course there's film. Seeing Robert Birch in front of me reminded me of the importance of film at North Hill. Not only the Saturday night movies, but film at other times as well. Casablanca was shown just recently. And I had seen it as a college student probably. But it meant so much more. It had a different meaning for me now. There's one particular idea in it, line in it, we'll always have Paris. It makes me think of being in Paris with my wife Pam. I have a wonderful photo. One of my favorite photographs of her is leaning against a wall with the Seine River in the background. But more broadly, that speaks to the importance of these maybe isolated specific memories that we have that mean so much to each of us in different, maybe associated with places or events. We'll always have those. So there's really a profound psychological and as well as artistic and philosophical and personal meaning in that. And that's true of many of the other films as well. It is, as Robert said, maybe the greatest film of all time. Science and technology. No, I went too fast. Here we go. The Big Bang. This is an artistic representation of the Big Bang. Steve Holt, a resident here, as many of you, probably almost all of you know, is an astrophysicist. He was head of space sciences at the Goddard lab of NASA, and he gave a talk in the Friday Night Forum series on the origin of the universe, which he said was his favorite topic to talk about. He referred to the Big Bang, and in the Q&A, I said that term implies to me a single point, a center, from which the universe expands. And I said, wouldn't that mean that depending on where you are in the universe, the different things, sort of comets and so on that are expanding, exploding outward, would be moving at different speeds. They're on different trajectories depending on where you are. And he said, no. He said, it all expands evenly. Then he said, got it?
Got it?
I didn't say anything. I'm not sure. All right. I'm not sure I really did get it. But not long ago, we had another lecture on a very similar topic. Charles Balin, who is a professor of astronomy at Yale University, and his topic was the dawn of time. And he said, and this I found helpful, he said, what expands are the coordinates that everything expands. He said, wherever you are in the universe, everything is expanding at the same rate. I had thought beforehand of a very simple kind of analogy. With an iPhone, if you expand it this way, the whole thing expands. It's not from a point, but the coordinates expand. So for me, this is part of the unexpected education that I did not have, at the university. I didn't really know. I didn't learn about the redshift, or the whereas Balin talked about it, the cosmic microwave background, which is a kind of the echo, so to speak, of the Big Bang. And then there's dark matter, which Steve Holt asked Charles Balin about. He said, you've given this whole lecture, you haven't spoken about dark matter or the Higgs boson. There's a whole universe out there that's full of things we didn't even know about. And one concept that not really a concept, but a reality that I hadn't been aware of, is the importance of observation in astronomy. Now, Balin described himself as an observational astronomer. We can only observe things so far, depending on the speed of light. And we do know that galaxies are being born constantly, and one can assume reasonably that they're probably being born beyond what we can actually see. For me, this is part of the unexpected continuing education. It's a world that is maybe unknowable, but certainly it's unknown. Now, that's a galaxy. There was reference in these talks to Edwin Hubble, the Hubble telescope. And I gather he was the first to identify galaxies which had previously been thought of as sort of clouds of dust or nebulae. That a lot of these actually were galaxies that were being born. And this, of course, is observable, and there are lots of them. Politics, history and politics. For me, one of the not only most interesting, but one of the most deeply engaging experiences I've had at North Hill was participating in discussion led by the late Bill King, a resident here until very recently. He passed away just a short time ago. A truly great man and a great friend of all of us who are here. Bill had alerted us quite some time ago at a Friday night forum about the importance of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, according to which any person who has taken an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and who engages in or supports rebellion or insurrection cannot hold office, civil or military, in the United States of America. Now that applied obviously to Confederate officials and officers. But arguably, and I would argue, that continues to apply. And there are well-known constitutional lawyers, including my classmate Larry Tribe at Harvard Law School, Judge Luttig, Michael Luttig, and others who argue that continues to apply, and by implication, the man who currently, I dropped my, it's not responding. Great.
Point it at it. I'm coming. Point it at it.
Hmm?
Maybe the battery died. Can we do it on? Maybe the battery died. Let me see.
It may be controllable from the computer.
Yes,
Let's see.
it is.
Let's see.
Yeah, I think this died.
The battery died.
Yeah, so,
Up and down.
oops. There we go.
Okay. All right.
Is that where you want to be?
There we go.
Okay.
Okay. Are you
Uh-huh.
okay with that? There you go.
It's happened before here. It'll probably happen again.
Thank you. Thank you for
Okay.
your patience.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, anyway, it was really educational.
People are having trouble hearing you.
All right.
Just lean in. Lean
All
in.
right. Okay. All right. It was a profound experience for those of us, Bill King, Peter Benfield, Steve Lindsay, to engage in that discussion. And as you probably know, the court system, the judiciary of Colorado declared not only that Donald Trump could not hold the office of the presidency, but it would be illogical for him even to be on the ballot. And the Supreme Court did not deal with the fundamental issue as to whether or not Trump's encouragement of incitement of the January 6th assault on the Capitol was a violation of the 14th Amendment. The court simply decided that the state of Colorado could not set a pattern for an election to a federal office for the entire country. It was really a secondary issue. So this remains a profound concern for me, and I think for many, many others. Okay, let's see if I can. All right. Economics and business. Soon after we arrived at North Hill, my wife, Pam, who passed away in November, many of you knew her, was asked to give a talk about the banking crisis. And she was a banker after being a teacher at the Windsor School and a volunteer later in many different roles. But she was the regional president of Baybanks, later Bank of America in Cambridge, dealing with Harvard University and some of the the other institutions and companies in the Cambridge area. This was something new for her to give a talk on that subject, and she talked with George Rockwell, a resident at North Hill, who had been the president and chairman of the State Street Bank and Trust Company, just to see if she was on the right track. And I know that she felt, after she talked with him, reassured that she was. For me, that illustrates the importance of kind of mutual reinforcement. We're sharing each other's understanding and knowledge. We confirm one another. In some cases, maybe not. And that was a very meaningful aspect of that whole experience for her. She did a wonderful job. I was very proud of her. Getting to know you, Villars-Saint-Pierre. North Hill has a Getting to Know You series, which May and Tom Chin are, I'm sure there are others as well, but they're the leaders of it. And the first in the series was with Villars-Saint-Pierre from Haiti, who's one of the chefs here. He's the carver that we have seen on Sunday. Remarkable man. He taught mathematics in Haiti before coming to the U.S. He's not from Port-au-Prince, he's from Gonaives. He is supporting a school in Gonaives, and a major person in the team here at North Hill. Worked very closely with our chefs. I was asked to introduce him and to say a few words about Haiti, which I did do. I'm a diplomatic historian. The Haitian Revolution is very significant for the history of the United States. It lasted for quite some time between 1791 and 1904. If it hadn't been for the slaves of Haiti rising up, the only successful slave revolt in history, and the world history actually, if it hadn't been for that, Napoleon wouldn't have given up on trying to control or trying to reestablish New France in the New World. He would not have sold Louisiana to the United States. And Jefferson's purchasing Louisiana doubled the size of the United States. It gave the United States a position geopolitically to control the temperate part of North America, extending from the Atlantic to the Pacific, and arguably the American position in the Western Hemisphere, if not the globe, depends, not intentionally, because the Haitians didn't mean that, but in fact, causally, it probably is responsible for the path that the United States has taken over a long period of time. That was a very meaningful experience, and he and I have become very, very good friends. The noosphere concept. Vladimir Ivanovich Vernadsky. He wrote a book titled The Biosphere, a more familiar term, published in 1926. He did not invent the term biosphere, but he developed the notion and extended it to include what he called the noosphere, from the Greek word nous, meaning mind. Briefly, in Vernadsky's theory of the Earth's development, the noosphere is the third stage in the Earth's development after the geosphere, inanimate matter, and the biosphere, biological life. Just as the emergence of life fundamentally transformed the geosphere, the emergence of human cognition, the noosphere, will fundamentally transform the biosphere. In this theory, the principles of both life and cognition are essential features of the Earth's evolution and must have been implicit in the Earth all along. He was one of the first scientists to recognize that the oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere result from biological processes. And in the 1920s, he published works arguing that living organisms can reshape the planets as surely as any physical force. He was an important pioneer of the scientific bases for the environmental sciences. And I think about all the environmentalists here at North Hill. Some with engineering backgrounds, others with simply citizen concerns. A lot of us participated in Sunday on Sunday. But Vernadsky is partly responsible for that. An extraordinary figure. Okay. I was amazed when in 2018, I was invited to go to Moscow as part of an exchange that the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy has with MGIMO, the Moscow State Institute of International Relations. And I was put up in an apartment in central Moscow and had to take the subway out to the part of Moscow where MGIMO is. And the name of the place is Prospekt Vernadskogo. And the picture shows you the very complicated transit system in Moscow. He was a professor, I hadn't known this, Ukrainian background, a professor at Moscow State University. He was a mineralogist, a geochemist, and one of the founders of that field, as I indicated earlier, environmental sciences. This is Moscow State University, MGIMO, of International Relations. It's considered to be one of the hardest institutions to get into. It trains people for the diplomatic service. It teaches about, I don't know how many languages. There was a conference going on taught in Chinese with students from all over the world speaking Chinese at this conference. It also produces a lot of spies, a lot of spooks come out of MGIMO. The Fletcher School no longer has a relationship. That was suspended because of the war in Ukraine had already started. But the big invasion did not come until later. So this has a significant personal importance for me. The noosphere concept is not merely a secular idea. The Jesuit scientist, he was a paleontologist and theologian, Teilhard de Chardin, elaborated the notion of the noosphere. As you see here, the geosphere, molecules, biosphere, cells, atmosphere, air, noosphere, thought. He argued that there's a certain correspondence between Darwinian evolution, as described by Vernadsky, and salvation. In other words, there's a spiritual dimension to the evolutionary process, which not everybody accepts that, of course, but it was his way of trying to reconcile science and religion. And within the Catholic Church, he has been criticized, but Pope Benedict, for one, and I think some others more recently, have indicated that there are certain elements in Teilhard de Chardin's thought that have merit and are even theologically acceptable. This is a very simple diagram showing the noosphere, the biosphere, and the geosphere, how they're related to each other. And this shows, this image of the noosphere shows the grid. I think of Elon Musk's Starlink satellites around the world. Technology has developed to such an extent that there really is a worldwide, a global web, which didn't exist before. For someone like Teilhard de Chardin, it proves the emergence of the development of a single mind, a thought layer around the world. But my own view is, despite the fact that there are all these elements, this is from Bloom's book on the global brain. Despite the fact that there are all these interesting elements in it, in the last analysis, what does make a difference is the globe, the world in the mind of a single person. I hadn't really known what the singularity is. That evidently is the view that technology, particularly artificial intelligence, can develop so rapidly to such an extent that it completely overwhelms the capacity of the human mind to deal with it, and that can produce a fundamental transformation, a singularity, to a new kind of existence. Memetics, you might say something about that. Richard Dawkins, the British Darwinian scientist, and a doctrinaire atheist, argues that ideas are like genes. Memes work in the mind of society something the way genes work in the body of a living thing. The Gaia theory, that's probably one that most of you are familiar with. That's James Lovelock, who argued that the Earth, the world, including the geosphere, the biosphere, the noosphere, it's a self-regulating system. That it's a homeostatic system. That it will balance itself. That everything will work out. And this notion, I hope, is perhaps correct, but it's certainly disputable. And finally, as I was saying earlier, I tend to be inclined more toward the Hannah Arendt view. It's the world in the mind of a single person. You, me, all of us individually, but together. It's that which is truly inspiring, and it's that which, for me, as a resident of North Hill for about 3 years now, has really expanded my own understanding of the world, and I'm very grateful for that. So that's all I have to say. Beaver, as I mentioned, very kindly has offered to come around with the microphone in case anybody would like to share any experiences or make any comments, observations.
Substituting.
You're substituting. Peter Metz.
Alan, thank you very much. You are a treasure here at North Hill. I'm so glad you came. I'll just reflect on my 10 years experience. In 2 weeks, it will be 10 years. North Hill has had a profound effect on me, and I could never do the wonderful job you've done of describing it, but I think of it as having expanded my mind, my range of interests, taught me new things emotionally, and dealing with one another. I get pushback here. It's wonderful. We have open discussions. They're not arguments, but they're vigorous discussions, and they're always done with respect. And that's just an incredible characteristic of this place. I discovered it very quickly that I could talk about almost anything as long as I did it calmly and with respect, and I got treated with respect. I have never in 10 years, and I have some pretty wild ideas and some pretty wild political philosophy, etc. I have never been told, what a crazy idea, or that's stupid, or how could you think that? Never. Now, they may think that, but they have never said it to me. But I do get good, stimulating pushback and have vigorous discussions that have caused me to think even more deeply and probe and learn and all the rest. So I don't know if it's the noosphere here or what it is, but I think you've captured it. It's just a marvelous place. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Peter. I'm reminded of when you mentioned different points of view and how we argue, there's pushback and so on. Part of what Hannah Arendt meant by thoughtfulness is arguing within oneself. Her model for that was none other than Socrates, whose debates were in his own, they were oneself dialogues. It was an internal discussion, an internal dialectic, and that one checks one's own thinking, against in relation to the views of others. For her, that's essential. Another person who is, in a way, a kind of a modern Socrates is the economist, some of you may know his work, Thomas Schelling. He wrote a book called The Strategy of Conflict, which is very influential in the political science field among those interested in nuclear deterrence and the like, arms control. But then he later wrote about a book about self-command. That what he did was to internalize what he was writing about international conflict and strategizing. One strategizes with oneself, one commands oneself, and he uses exactly the kind of dialectic that Socrates used, in order to arrive at a position that can stand the test of reason. And these are good guides. Goes back a long way.
Alan, do you have time for, say, 3 more questions? Can we do that? Does anyone have a question for Alan or a comment?
Or observation.
Or an observation? Yeah. All the way in the back. I'm coming. Bob is coming.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I am not a resident. My parents were residents, Dad for 13 years, Mom for 20 years, and they contributed, they learned, they were very active here. And I just want to thank North Hill for allowing non-residents to come to some of these fantastic talks. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Please come back. Anyone else? A comment or a question? No? Well, first of all, I feel, oh, we do have one right here, sorry. The light was in.
I am a relatively new resident here. We've been here for about 4 months. And I want to say, when you first come or make a decision to join a CCRC, you have over 400 new neighbors. And you don't know what that's going to be like. And what I have found is that this has been so reassuring that I made the right decision. I'm not sure how I got there, but I've arrived in a good place for me. So I want to thank you and your participation in making this such a great place.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.